Good morning, everyone. Guys, listen, this video, I'm going to try and keep it short. Zelensky's admitted the front lines collapsed in Ukraine. The British are literally saying that there's going to be boots on the ground. So are the French. Let's just get in with it, guys, because I know your time is precious. And if you have ever wanted to go and think about, sharing this video or hitting the buttons below with friends or family, I think now is the time to do that, because if you live in the United Kingdom right now, this is going to move really quickly. What we've seen recently with the introduction of Storm Shadow, introduction of Scalp, introduction of long-range missiles into firing into Russia, you get nothing. And then all of a sudden, 1,000 miles an hour, it happens. Remember, Keir Starmer went and visited the troops like a couple of days ago. Be under no illusion, he will have taken with him his best special forces advisors, his best military attaches, and behind the scenes, those guys will have come to an agreement, an arrangement of putting boots on the ground. These plans will already be in place. So, guys, let's just get in with it. Let's just get on with it. Right, let me go to the war map straight away, guys, because this is important. Okay, I do this every day, guys. Okay, and if you're on the live stream tonight, we'll be talking about this. So I've gone a little bit further back than I normally do. But what I want everybody to understand is the proximity and the key town here of Dnieper in the in the western region of this map. Now, if we look at the river Dnieper, that is a defensive line that the Russians can form behind, and they can have that as a new boundary. So until the Russians are up to this river Dnieper, I don't see anybody's even going to consider ceasefire talks, peace talks. It's just not going to happen. And obviously, Zelensky's come out yesterday and he said that there's no way that the Ukrainians can push the Russians back. What I want you to do now, guys, is I just want you to consider, keep in mind the proximity of Dnieper, and then watch this region here. Where are we? And there's this town of Hanivka. Where's Hanivka? Here. This town of Hanivka. I think there's some sort of secret base or something in this town of Hanivka, because you'll see in a moment this pincer movement around that town of Hanivka. So I'm just going to zoom forwards, guys, and I want you to note, do we think that the Ukrainians have a front line that's holding? This is literally every day, and I can only imagine what this feels like if you're Ukrainian and you're seeing your ground, your land disappear as quickly as this. And people are being gaslit. There's no mainstream media coverage of this because it really is so bad for the Ukrainians. Right, now, from that map there, do we think that the Ukrainian front, do we think they even have a front line in Ukraine? No, of course not, because wherever the front line was, it's gone now, and the Russians are pushing on literally the Russians are pushing daily. Now, I just want to go over here to the river Dnieper. Now, I'm going to measure what, the distance of this Dnieper, just so you guys can get some sort of perspective. Now, obviously, there's shallow, there's short parts, there's wider parts. So I'm just going to go here and see and look at the distance. Call it there to there. So that's 1.9 kilometers across. So almost just over a mile across. Now, like I said, there's parts that are shorter, there's parts that are wider, but a 1.9 kilometer stretch of water is very difficult to conduct an assault over. That's why nobody's going to even, Vladimir Putin's not going to even consider any peace negotiations until he's up to this river. Because as the case on the ground is now, there's nothing to stop there's nothing to stop the Russians pushing forwards by the means of natural barriers. If the Ukrainians manage to get reinforced, if the Ukrainians manage to have a surge for whatever reason, then there's nothing to stop the Ukrainians pushing the Russians back. This is sheerly a manpower it's sheerly a manpower question. Now, this town of Dnieper is a huge industrial base. There's a lot of factories here, a lot of industry that Putin will want to take over. Now, the problem here is Dnipro lies on the other side of the river Dnipro. So for Putin to take control of Dnipro, he's going to have to cross this river. So I would suspect he's going to come all the way up to the river Dnipro, and then like some sort of, I don't know, maybe this road here or this road here will be the new boundary. I don't know. You know, time will tell. But I mean, look how thick the Dnipro is here, guys. You know, it's just not gonna, you're just not gonna launch an assault over this river. It's, you know, it's impossible. So anyway, that's the situation on the ground in Ukraine. So we're just going to go straight onto the share screen again, guys, because I want to keep this video short. I want to keep it sweet. Where are we? And I want to talk about what's been happening on, you know, what people have said. Now, it's no shock. It should be no shock to you guys following this channel. You know, what's been said. Vladimir Zelensky admits Ukraine cannot remove Russian troops from occupied parts. In an interview with French newspaper Le Partisan, sorry, Partisan is a bar in Ukraine. In an interview with French newspaper Le Parisien, Ukraine's president said they do not have the strength to retake territories occupied by Russia. He said there is one option remaining. Guys, listen, you know, I've said this for the longest time. I've been documenting this in real time. Go look through my other videos. You know, I've said this is coming. The day is really upon us. While Kiev would never recognize Russia's rule, he said diplomacy is the only option to get President Vladimir Putin to withdraw his army. So what I see this leading towards is some sort of peacekeeping deal, some sort of, you know, peace force ceasefire on the ground. But again, we've got to understand the situation. Like from the map, Vladimir Putin's not going to come to any agreement. And, you know, when I do these videos and I say things that are going to happen in the future, you know, and everybody talks about, oh, but Donald Trump is going to make a peace deal. Oh, this is going to happen. Oh, this will never happen. When I was saying these things years ago, well, like last year, I was I was coming out in public, you know, public forums and saying these things. People were saying, oh, that's never going to happen. That's World War III. And I was saying like, yeah, guys, trust me. Like, you don't know how bad this situation is. We are heading to a global conflict on an industrial scale. Now, the way that, let me come to the other articles and then I'll give you my commentary. Where are we? So, John, well, I'll just read I'll share the headline, I'll read you the article, and then I'll give the commentary with it. So UK considers sending troops to train Ukrainians. The Ministry of Defence is considering the possibility of sending British troops to Ukraine to help train the country's armed forces. Defence Secretary John Healey literally lives over there. He literally lives over there. Where are we? Defence Secretary John Healey has been in the capital Kiev, to discuss plans to provide more support to Ukraine in the coming year. He declined to give details on those plans, but defence sources say he has not ruled out sending troops to Ukraine to help train Ukraine. So there it is, guys. You know, the rhetoric's changing now from no to, to maybe. And this is an inevitable. Right now, as I'm making this video, as everybody understands it, as I've been saying for the longest time, this is an inevitability. There will be British boots on the ground, and we are leading towards a global conflict of an industrial scale. So this comes also as, this also comes now as we've got to put this in context to what other people have been saying, and also the movements on the ground. If the United Kingdom and if the West in general let Ukraine fail, that's the end to the euro, that's the end to the dollar. It's the end to the Western way of life, because if we can't stay on top as world leader, if we can't stay on the top of these situations and say, hey guys, listen, you know what, we're in charge, we're in control, we dictate this situation, we dictate these movements, then the Russians are just going to keep pushing, and the Russians know this. But equally for the Russians know this. If the Russians fail in Ukraine, it's the end. It's the end to Russia, and Russia will be balkanized. It will be reduced to Russia won't be no more. It will just be vastly smaller. What you would see is St. Petersburg, Moscow, maybe some of the northern regions would be kept as Russia, and the rest of the country would just become independent states. So everybody understands what's at stake here. So this comes also as, where are we? Is it this one? I think it is. Zelensky says he discussed French troops' idea with Macron. Ukrainian president said he worked to continue the proposal to put European forces on the ground. NATO chief Mark Rutte warns Europe leaders not to preempt peace process, what we know on day 1030. So it's all coming out now, guys. And I'll put all these links in the description. And then right now, I'll tell you how it's going to work. So, so first of all, I need to qualify this by saying I've been telling you guys that this has been coming for such a long time. When I've been spotting these little sprouts and, these little seeds poking out in the weeds, go back through my other videos. So what's going to happen is there will be some sort of now, whether they're peacekeepers or whether they're just boots on the ground as international trainers, at this point it doesn't matter what t-shirt they put on, because they will have the same goal to destroy the Russian military and to keep pushing that way, because there's no way we can go back now. There's been too much money spent. There's been too much, the toll. By toll, I mean finances, I mean machinery, and I mean the human toll as well, more importantly. It's been too great now on both sides for either side to back down. There's too much happened. There's too much happened. So what's going to happen is there will be some sort of peacekeeping force, whether that's the military, EU military assistance mission Ukraine, which is a thing. It's got it's got funding, it's got people in charge, it's got structure. Whether it's the European security scheme, whether it's that, it doesn't really matter what it is. But these guys will go in first, either as trainers, as peacekeepers, whatever it is. Those guys will go up to the River Dnieper, and the mission will be: you guys are not allowed to cross the River Dnieper. That will be initially. But part of training, be under no illusion, part of any training mission, especially when you're training another military, is training and operational mentoring. Now, you need operational mentoring because you can't just send these guys out into combat missions, that are straight out the factory, because they don't have the experience. You need a highly trained unit and you need a highly experienced unit. Training is better than experience because, we can train how to use systems and you can understand SOPs. Those two things are not, they're not synonymous. They're, equally, they're interchangeable. What do I mean by that? I mean, it's always best to have a trained army that's experienced, but sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes in some such situations, it's better to have an experienced military with a little bit of training, but other times it's better to have, a military that's highly trained with a little bit of experience. So in these conflicts, when, I don't know, let's just say that a group of people are going in there to train X amount of soldiers. They break them down into battalions, companies, and platoons. Each platoon will be broken down into 3 sections, and they'll be doing something called assault suppressed reserve. Now, to do this, you need to understand the battle structure and the battle procedure, which, it's very difficult to give someone 20 years of experience in a couple of months. You just can't do that because there's so many little caveats and little things that can go wrong, and you have to think on your feet. And the only way you get experience, normally the only way you get experience is with bad decisions, and the only way you get bad decisions is by doing the job and making mistakes yourself. So you can do that to a degree, but this is why you need people to go out on the ground as operational mentors. So if there's a section commander, for example, he will train his 8 guys, 10 guys, however they're rolling with their sections. They will train those guys, and then they will go out on the ground with them either as a commander or as an observer. It doesn't really matter because they will be pushing forwards on the front line. Normally, that's how it would happen. Maybe they will send a senior rank out with a platoon. It depends how the numbers game is and how they structure things, but that's what I see happening. And again, as part of that training, there will be an element of operational mentoring. So that's how it's going to start with first. But don't forget, once these guys are, once these peacekeepers are on the ground, whether it's peacekeepers, training missions, doesn't really matter what it is. Once those boots are on the ground, and this is going to happen quick, you know, one day, like literally we'll wake up on a Monday and nothing will have happened. And then by the Friday, there'll be boots on the ground will be saturated and the logistics chains will be open. That's how quick it will happen. So, and I'm not saying it's coming this Monday. I'm not saying it's coming next Monday or whatever, but that really is how quick it will happen. It will happen as, you know, and we'll be sat here thinking, wow, what just happened? So once the boots are on the ground, you know, once the boots are on the ground, they're doing their training mission, they're doing their peacekeeping force, whatever it is, you know, the ceasefire will break or whatever happens in the east, there'll be an incident. And then those guys who are doing training missions or those guys who are doing, you know, peacekeeping forces, they'll take their peacekeeping forces T-shirts off and they'll put their warfighting T-shirts on. That is how it's going to happen, guys, you know. Whether this is, you know, people are talking about NATO and EU army, right now it doesn't matter because the world is heading towards a global conflict on an industrial scale. There's, you know, there's so much, you know, there's so many complexities here. People are asking me for dates and timelines, and you know, there are so many temporal markers that are just happening so quickly, and then there are temporal markers that I'm waiting to happen. And when there's more stuff happening, it becomes more difficult to predict what's coming next because there's so many uncertainties. But anyway, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it here. Jux of this video, Zelensky admits that the front lines collapsed and he can't do anything. Boots on the ground's imminent. This will, you know, I feel this is the first boots on the ground are going to be British and French, and then you will obviously get mission creep like we've seen in Iraq, in Afghanistan. You'll see things get expanded to a wider and wider aspect of that country. And then obviously from the Russian side, you know, the Russians are going to increase their military as well. They're going to increase things, and you know, nothing good is coming. Anyway, guys, I'm going to back to grid. I'll get you guys another video later.